Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, and you?
Now that it's getting a little warmer.
Let's pray for a few
Yep.
more days.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started now. My name is Sydney Smith, and I'm the host for today's discussion and also the leader or the chair or the something of the whatever the drone of the adult faith formation work group. I want to also welcome all of those who are online joining us today. And I do want to say, just at the start, so I get this out there, if you would like slides from today's presentation, email Bill, bhall@fpca2.org. bhall, that's all you need to remember. And he'll send a PDF of the slides if you'd like to have them after today. And it's there. And we've got signs all over for this. Today is the third part in the series on palliative care. We've had good discussions for the first 2 weeks. We've had a lot of interest in the presentations. A lot of people have been going on since they were done and seeing them online. Today, it's our good fortune to have with us L.J. Brazier. And sorry about that.
It's okay.
I put that down. They are.
They can be hard.
They can be. I know. I'm sorry. I apologize. LJ has been a chaplain for well over a decade at the University of Michigan, Michigan Medicine. And has a chaplaincy in the Department of Spiritual Care. I found that really interesting to go out and look at the website for the Department of Spiritual Care yesterday when I was putting the intro together. LJ works in palliative care, maternal fetal medicine and pregnancy loss, critical care, and also clinician well-being. Pardon?
You did do your homework.
I did. I tried to. LJ has 2 graduate degrees. They received a Master's of Divinity in 2012 from Vanderbilt and an MS in Healthcare Administration Management at Michigan State, the College of Business in 2021. I want to read something that I found in an interview or a conversation with LJ. It was on Facebook. They were asked in an interview what they wanted others to know about chaplains. They responded, and here's the quote. There's a trope in media that portrays the chaplain as a middle-aged or older clergyman approaching the bedside of a dying person to quietly say a prayer or give a final sacrament while no one else is around. First, I want to erase that caricature. While we can and do provide spiritual or religious ritual when it's helpful, these rituals are almost never done in isolation and almost always in connection with the person's loved ones and our caregivers. Our work is about helping folks cope with and adjust to the inevitable traumas of being in the hospital. Second, I want to offer a different character for chaplains. Chaplains are increasingly diverse in their forms, their ages, religions, cultural, gender, sex, and sexual identities. What we all have in common is the recognition that the human spirit, the essence, is what matters. And that's the end of that
Pretty good.
quote. It's a very interesting interview, or they're introducing you to people. A lovely factoid about LJ is that they are also a handler of their dog partner, Anna. Michigan Medicine's facility dog. Yes.
Very first one.
Very first one. So he's got they have a special,
She's very kind.
oh, here's Anna. Bow wow, she says. Go LJ. So please join me in welcoming LJ. We're so looking forward to what you're going to say.
Should have tested the microphone before, but here we are testing it. Hope it works okay. I'm LJ. I sent a briefer bio of myself, but Sid did a lot of great reconnaissance, so I couldn't ask for a better intro. But I was going to introduce myself, but I think that needs not be done at this point. But I'll tell you about my little pictures so you can get to know me better there. On the left is a Lego minifig. If you have grandkids, you might be familiar with these. We went to Brick Bash, which is a Lego convention last weekend, and we made self-portraits in Lego, and that's my self-portrait. It's a person wearing a sort of, utility shirt with pink pants, and in one hand has a flame, or flaming sword maybe, and in the other hand has a broom. And on their face is sort of like an anxious expression, and their hair's up on end. There have been many interpretations for all of the symbols in this Lego man. But my favorite is that I go about the world just wanting things to be better. And I'm either want to burn it down or clean it up, and sometimes both. So I have a very strong kind of justice orientation. I just want people to be better for each other. And then, yeah, my dog partner, Anna. Anna actually started working here in 2016 with me. She's been my full-time partner since then. She got to work with Joe during his fellowship. Anna actually had cancer herself. She had a cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. It's a cancer that humans also get. It affects the skin. And she was able to do oral chemotherapy for 2 years. And she was actually taking a chemotherapy that was developed in the 90s for Hodgkin's lymphoma in humans. And it made a world of difference. It made her feel great for 2 years. And eventually it stopped working, as these things do. And her skin became very delicate. It got a lot of wounds all over it. It wouldn't heal easily. She became very tired because the lymphoma affects her whole body. And so we were, through that, doing good palliative care. She took a low dose of steroids to try to keep her energy up. She would take preventative antibiotics to try to keep her skin clean. One of the interesting things that our doctor did from a palliative care perspective is that when her disease had progressed quite a lot, and it was clear she was likely in her last weeks or so of life, her doctor said, there is this chemotherapy that we had tried earlier that worked really well, but it has a lot of risky side effects. I think that those risky side effects don't matter as much now because she is in her last weeks, and I think it could help her feel better. And if not, it just might not do anything. And so I said, okay, you know what? It's December, the holidays are coming, let's try it. And so we tried a dose of it in early December, and it made her feel great, literally the next day. And she had a great month. She spent the month at home with her kids, cuddling, enjoying winter break. She did Christmas, she did New Year. And then about 2 weeks into January, she woke up one morning and she didn't feel good. And so I was like, it's okay, dude, you can sleep in, relax. And then about an hour later, she started looking like something was wrong. And then about an hour after that, she died in our bed. And so palliative care isn't just for humans. I'm grateful for the time we were able to have with her and that we were able to help her feel as well as she could, even in the context of knowing that she was dying. So also I'm having a bit of an existential crisis myself. This is the first time in my life that I've lived, it's not the first time in my life I've lived without her, but she really was the first love of my life. She was the first person, I guess, who I loved deeply and who loved me deeply back. And she made me a better person and made me a person who was able to find a human I loved that much. And in my time with Anna, I also met my wife, who always reminds me that Anna was always my first wife. According to Anna, Anna was always the first one. But anyway, so that's my dog. So back to palliative care for humans. You already heard this stuff about me and the things I do. I won't talk about that anymore. So I want to not go over too many things you've heard before. I also want to fill in some new things about spiritual care, but there will be overlap because a lot of the work we do overlaps. But I do want to talk about, again, what palliative care is, and then I want to talk about why on earth is spiritual care automatically included in palliative care, and then talk more specifically about what does a palliative care chaplain do. So this is one of the pages that if you do go home with the slides, this was a good one to go back to. So who is palliative care for? And you've heard this. Palliative care is for anybody with a serious illness, such as cancer, progressive neurological illness, right? Think Parkinson's type things, lung disease, like maybe COPD, heart disease, like heart failure, or kidney disease, like end-stage kidney disease, and certainly some other things too. And the other thing to remind folk is that palliative care is not about prognosis. It's not based on your prognosis. It's based on need. Do you have needs? Do you have a symptom burden that is not being addressed? When does palliative care happen? And you've heard a lot about palliative care for adults, for older adults. I would remind you, as Sid mentioned in the introduction, palliative care happens from even before birth. We have perinatal palliative care, which is for pregnant folks who have little ones who are known to have maybe genetic predispositions or anatomical issues that will make it very hard for them to live outside the womb. We have neonatal palliative care, which is for little ones who make it to the neonatal ICU, but again have very complex medical conditions that may make it hard for them to live outside of the ICU. Children, we have probably the most common group is children with childhood cancers, but also things like, what's a really common one? I'll think of some more. But teenagers, again, teenagers get all of these same conditions too. You have people who grow up with cardiac conditions and all kinds of things that might be life-limiting as they go into early adulthood. And then again, adults and older adults. So my work actually began in perinatal and neonatal palliative care, working with families who have, who know that they're going to have a little one who has a complex medical need that might make it difficult for them to live outside the womb or to live outside of a hospital. And then after I came here is actually when I moved into taking care of adults. So the other thing I want to give you is where to get more information. As you go out here and maybe years from now, you know, you have a loved one who has a complex medical situation. These are the two best kind of websites for me, for regular folk, for kind of lay folk to go to. One is CAPC, C-A-P-C, and I actually just have a download there of a PDF, and the PDF is a quick one-pager of just like, what is palliative care? And then the other website is getpalliativecare.org. And I'll show you, actually, if I can, click on this link, what it goes to. We'll see if my slow little internet allows us. See, so here's the one pager I told you about. Palliative care and what you should know. And it's a lot of the things you've already heard. That palliative care can be provided in a variety of settings. It is paid for by insurance. It's for anyone with a serious illness. It's provided by a whole bunch of different kinds of providers. And the same websites I kind of mentioned to you before. So hopefully these are some resources that might be able to kind of remind you of these conversations. So talked about what spiritual care is, or palliative care is, and now I want to talk a little bit about what spiritual care is. And when some folk think of spiritual care, they think about what happens in church, pastoral care. But what I do, chaplaincy, is a kind of spiritual care that always happens outside the church. Our job is designed to reach people who are in very challenging situations and not in a position to get to traditional church. So think like the military, the armed forces. There's always chaplains embedded there. We deploy with teams, but we also stay here on bases. And that is to be able to be there to address these spiritual concerns and do so in a very particular cultural context. The same goes with schools. Colleges, boarding schools often have chaplains embedded. And it's not for the promotion of a particular religion. It's to help meet young adults who are going through big changes and big questions and be able to address these concerns more broadly. And the same goes for hospitals. Hospitals often have chaplains. And our job is to know the culture of the hospital, to know the people in the hospital, but also to know the cultures of our patients and to help really find the intersection of those things and help address those spiritual needs that come up in the context of needing acute care healthcare. So the more formal definition that we work from is a sort of shared global definition of spirituality. And there's been a number of work groups over the decades, and the shared definition of spirituality that we have across cultures, across countries, is that spiritual care, spirituality, right? Spirituality relates to the way in which we seek and express meaning and purpose, and the ways in which we connect to ourselves, to the world around us, to other people, and to the significant or sacred. So I put it in two boxes because I think of it as kind of, I think in my head as like a Venn diagram. That it's how we do this work of finding and crafting meaning and purpose through all seasons of our life, and then how we relate to the things around us and within us. Thoughts? How am I doing? Did I get anything wrong? Anybody want to? Okay. So why on earth include spiritual care and palliative care? For me, it's like obvious. If you need palliative care, you're pretty sick. You might know that your life is going to end sooner than you might want it to. You might know that your loved one's life is going to end sooner than you want it to. That in itself often brings up big spiritual questions. Why is this happening? This isn't how it's supposed to be. But also a spiritual question about the loss of that connection. Who am I going to be without this person, right? Like the question I asked about my dog, even though I hate to compare dogs to humans, but it's a spiritual crisis. Who am I without her? You know, when you lose your spouse, who am I without them? God forbid when you might lose a child. How do I go on in the world? Those are big spiritual questions. And so that's why it just makes sense to try to include spiritual care and palliative care. And in fact, the organizations that regulate and accredit palliative care require that spiritual care be available in the context of palliative care for those same reasons. And so another way that we can break it down is to talk about some of the different kinds of distress that happen. And you know, in medicine and healthcare, we love a survey, we love a data. So we love to be able to measure things. So I've also included some of the tools that palliative care organizations use to measure some of these things in case you're super curious. So there is this kind of overall distress. Joe talked about a sort of total pain or total suffering. And that is just when it's like everything is terrible. I'm having a hard time imagining the future. I'm having a hard time even accepting what I'm hearing right now. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm overwhelmed, I don't want to do these things. And that's just the patient's perspective. When that happens, it also expresses itself physiologically. It expresses itself in physical symptoms. And so if you're someone who already has a complex, chronic, potentially terminal illness, and then on top of that you're feeling all of these things, often it makes those symptoms worse. It can make the pain worse. It can make nausea worse. One of the hallmarks of this for me in my work, and it came up the other day, is we had a patient who was a young woman in her 40s diagnosed with quite suddenly with a late-stage cancer. She has small children and a spouse at home. And when she comes into the hospital, she has a cyclical vomiting, which means that, like, sorry to say vomiting to everybody. Sorry about that, but it happens. And what that means is that you get into that cycle and you just can't get out. And the physician who was seeing her was like, I can't figure out, no medicine is working. Every medicine I give her isn't stopping this cycle of vomiting. And she just seems anxious and vomiting and anxious and vomiting. And I was like, yes, that is cyclical vomiting. And actually the way you treat it isn't with antiemetics. It's a stress response. So it's a hallmark sign that someone has this overall distress and potentially the spiritual distress as part of that, right? That everything is just too much. It's the big emotions. It's the potential loss of connections. It's the change in one's own body. It's the fear of what's going to happen in the future, the fear of who I am if I'm this sick, in addition to the physical pain of this disease. And so I said, great, this is a hallmark sign that we need to address this in a more multifaceted way. This isn't something we can fix with just medicine. We need to talk. We need to hold space. And so that's what we worked on, is spending time together, being in the moment together, acknowledging and noticing how we're feeling, breathing, finding ways to feel held, and then using a variety of different kind of medications. Not just thinking about antiemetics to help stop that need to barf, but also using some anxiety medications to help bring down the volume of the noise a little bit or take off the pointy edges so that we can use those coping strategies. So that's one of the reasons that things like spiritual care are so important in the context of palliative care, because even spiritual distress or overall distress can actually make the physical symptoms worse. I'm curious at this point if that resonates with anyone. Like, does anyone have any experience with something like that?
I can't help saying you could probably use a practice in between talking and
You're awarded a microphone.
I need it
Oh,
so that
okay.
people can, in the
Yes.
audience can
I
hear.
want to hear you.
All right.
Thank you.
I just feel the need to, or the desire to make some.
Well, it's very interesting what you're saying. You're talking about medication and about talking or helping the stress from a psychological point of view, but something in between would probably be very, very helpful, like reflexology or like acupuncture.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And acupuncture can be very, very effective in strongly bringing the energy down into the feet, and that counteracts all the inappropriate energy rising up, like vomiting.
What's your name, by the way?
Roseanne.
Roseanne. Hi, One of
She's an acupuncturist.
I figured, yeah. So Roseanne has spoken my language. So Roseanne's talking about some of the other kind of modalities of care that we often don't have access to in the hospital, but that I'm a big fan of sending people out to. So I should have said this before. My work is exclusively with people in the hospital in acute settings. And there's a reason for that. Spiritual care is better at that than we are at like outpatient longitudinal things. If you can make it out of the hospital and you can get to appointments, I want you to see like a licensed therapist in addition to some other people. And I want to get you into a community of your own. In the hospital, I'm a temporary resource. I am there to be like your community in one person while you're stuck in the hospital, and potentially your bridge to your community. So I don't have the good pleasure and privilege of spending too much time outpatient with folk, but if I can send them out, these are the things I'm sending them to. Some of these other healing modalities that can help, especially at that intersection of spiritual, psychological, emotional, and physical pain. And those are things like, acupuncture, reflexology, massage, mindfulness, mindful movement, Tai Chi. A lot of these things can help people work on those connections between the physical and the spiritual. So thank you for that. It's a very important point and a very important aspect of palliative care if we can get people out to that. Yeah.
I have a question. First of all, I'm loving this. It's so useful. In the case that you just talked about where the woman had a bad cancer diagnosis with young children, et cetera, like, how often are you seeing her? Like, I'm having a little bit of, I would love to have something more concrete, like, is it a single day? Is it every day? Or how does that work?
It depends on the person. Again, because it's the hospital, if it's someone who has enough resources at home, people, geographic access to healthcare resources, and if it's someone we can stabilize physically, we want to get them out of the hospital as soon as we can. And so in that case, I may only see someone one time, and we're going to go deep in that time. It's going to be maybe 1 hour, and we're going to do what we need to do. In some other cases, if someone's in the hospital for a longer period of time, it may be someone that I see twice a week for maybe an hour each, and maybe someone that I see once a week, but I'm working really closely with everybody else on their team to make sure that everyone is addressing the spiritual needs that the person has. And so I'll talk more about how I use the multidisciplinary team to try to help address these things too. I'll tell you another story, of a similar story that might help answer the question. I had a woman who I met in the fall, and actually I think I met her, yeah, that's right, I did meet her in the fall. And she came into our hospital. She's a young woman who has children who are almost grown. They're high school, and then the oldest just started college. And she comes in, unfortunately, with a very, very, very advanced breast cancer, with a very large mass, and then metastases that had spread all through her body. And so one of the questions is, where this has been happening, this didn't just happen yesterday. This has been growing for years. Where have you been, right? What has kept you from coming to the hospital? For, I don't know, 5 years, maybe more? And so we get to know her story. And she herself, by the way, was a nurse. She was a behavioral health nurse who had been working. And so we were like, there's a story here, please tell me. And so that's often one of the things I do in spiritual care is to say, oh, there's a story here, and I need to know it. We all need to know it. So what is the story? As it turns out, when her children were very, very small, well, not very small, they were middle school age, so maybe less than 10 years ago, her husband died. And so she was left a single parent of 3 tweens, working as, at that time, like a nurse assistant. And so she was like, wow, I need to find a way to make more money while raising these children. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna go back to nursing school so I can get my bachelor's, get my master's, get to a career where I can support these kids through college. During that time, she finds this mass. She goes and gets it checked out and gets diagnosed as a breast cancer. And she says to herself, I do not have time for this. I need to get my kids through school. I need to get myself through school. I need to give them the life that me and my husband imagined for them. We wanted them to have better for us. We wanted them to have their own careers. I need to get them there. If I stop and do cancer treatment, there's no one to support them financially. There's no one to get them through school and through college. I can't do that to them. I would rather push through. And so she did. She finished her BSN, her MSN, her master's in nursing, in behavioral health nursing. She got her oldest through high school and into college in nursing school. And her middle one was in his last year of high school, doing well, ready to go to college, and her littlest one was getting ready to go into high school. And so then she gets sick enough that she's like, well, I can't push anymore. I'm too sick, and that's why I came to the hospital now. And now my kids are older, they can do for themselves. Now I'm ready to do cancer treatment. Now I can afford to take the time to do cancer treatment. And so the oncologists see her and they say, we are so sorry. It is too late for cancer medicine to fix this. We might be able to use cancer medicine to buy you a little bit of time, but not much. So I am getting to know her during this time, and I see the writing on the wall. The writing on the wall is that this is a late stage disease. It's already affecting many organ systems. She likely has months left to live at best. So what I want to know in the back of my head, and this is the strange thing about my job, I want to know, who does she need me to be? And how can I become that person as quickly as possible? But also, how can I help get ready for her death? Even if she's not ready to talk about it. Because I know that even if we get her out of this hospital, she's going to come right back. And when she comes back, she's going to be dying. And her kids are going to be here. And so I need to know how to care for them then. So I sit down with her and I get to know her. And she says, I can't tell my children. Can't tell my children. Don't want to tell my children, can't tell my children. And I was like, your kids are smart. Probably know what's going on. But I hear you. And so the more we talk, I realize that what she needs me to be, and we decide this together, what she needs me to be is the keeper of this story. So that when she is dying, when she can no longer speak for herself, and her children ask, why didn't mom tell us? That I would have the story. So she wanted me to be the one who was there when she was dying, when her kids were asking, why didn't we know? Why didn't she get treatment? And so I said, okay, I will be the keeper of that story. So we are able to get her out. We are able to get her home for a little while. She does some palliative chemotherapy, to help her try to feel a little bit better. Our palliative care physicians, nurse practitioners follow her, do video visits and manage her medications remotely to try to help her feel as well as she can at home for a while. And she does, and then she gets sicker and sicker and sicker, and then her family brings her back into the hospital. And she pops up on my list, and we go see her. And she is, in fact, now more actively dying. And so the kids are now trying to play catch up and figure out, what does mom want us to do? What's the right thing to do here? And luckily, I know these things. And so I meet the kids, and the kids say, oh, are you LJ? I was like, yeah, I'm LJ. And they're like, okay, mom said you're the one we should find when she's here. So we talk about what the right thing is to do next for mom, how to care for her, how to care for her in a way she wants to be cared for, how to make that work in the hospital. And when she's in her last hours to days, her oldest daughter says, you know, you mentioned that it's been years that she's had this, but we haven't known that long. When did this start? When did mom get diagnosed? And I was like, oh, in 2018. She got diagnosed in 2018. And told her the story. I said, we talked about this. And your mom said that when the time came, that I should tell you the story. And so here it is. And as we started talking, her daughter was livid. I mean, if any of you have had teenagers, I'm sure you can picture an outraged 20-year-old. Outraged. And as we talk more, she settles down, and then she says, you know what? My mom did this her way. She always did things her way. This was her way. This makes sense. This makes sense that this is what she chose. So those conversations that I had with her mom in the hospital probably added up to like maybe 3 hours at the most. But in those 3 hours, we focused on who I needed to be to her, what she needed from me, what I could do. And so we can achieve a lot very quickly with a right assessment of who the person needs me to be and what they need me to do. That's a long-winded way of answering your question, but I wonder if it's helpful to kind of give a picture of what I do.
My question, oh, sorry. My question has to do with.
Nope, it's on.
Oh.
It's on.
Oive. What role does the patient, him or herself, play in the palliative care scenario? Her own, his own?
Yeah, great question. So the question is, what role does the patient play in the palliative care team, as it were? For me, I'm going to answer this with another long-winded story at some point, but I'll try to answer it in a short way as well. I want the team to become what the patient needs us to be. I want us to care for the patient the way they want to be cared for. So I want the patient to be determining what are the values that we use to make decisions, what are the goals we're working toward. And I want that to be the way it is, regardless of how anybody on the team feels about it. Because everybody, it's their life, and it's their end of life. And I think we owe it to them to make it about them. And so some of our patients will say, I want to be at the helm. I want to be in charge. I want to know everything. I want to understand everything. I want to have a say in everything. And other patients will say, I want you to know who I am, but I want you to tell me what the right thing is to do. Because you're the doctors, you're the professionals, you're the people who do this all the time. I want you to know me and know what's important to me, and know who's important to me, but I want you, at the end of the day, to be the one to make the recommendations and to tell me what the right thing is to do medically. And there's a whole other spectrum in there, too. So I think a good example that we have recently is a woman who is about 60 years old. Her children are adults. She's a Chaldean lady, and she has a disease called systemic scleroderma. which in very layman's terms, and the nurses and physicians in the room should forgive me, it's where a lot of the tissues in your body become gradually crispier. And those can be the tissues around your organs. And so eventually everything just stops working because bodies are meant to be kind of like juicy and mobile, not crispy. So she has a fairly advanced stage of scleroderma, in large part because she's and her family have taken impeccably good care of herself and have done all the medicine that can be done. But now it's so advanced that her heart can't work, her kidneys can't work, her lungs can't work. And so she gets to the hospital and she gets into a cardiac ICU, and they're actually able to use their like magic cardiac medicines to find a very delicate balance where nothing's working good, but it's all working well enough together that one isn't causing an imminent crisis. So she's in this very tenuous balance of just sort of simultaneous multi-organ failure, but in a way that is like stable. But it's very tenuous balance that can only be maintained in an ICU. And so that's when palliative care gets called. By the way, that's too late, but we make it work. So palliative care gets called. And what the team asks us to do, the doctors are like, oh, this lady is dying and she clearly doesn't understand she's dying. Can you guys come in and help her understand that she's dying? So we meet her and her family. As it turns out, she very much understands how sick she is. She very much is aware that she's dying. Also, she's feeling really good right now relative to how she's felt before. And she's able to enjoy time with her family. Her family's able, they have the resources, they're able to come to the hospital and spend time with her. Her kids are spending time with her. And one of her kids, in-law, her son's wife, is gonna have their first grandbaby this summer. And so she says, I am staying right here in this ICU until my grandbaby is born. Like, literally over my dead body. Like, this is where I'm staying. And I was like, blessings. Now, if you spend time working in an ICU, you might imagine critical care doctors don't typically go into medicine to take care of people for months and to do like critical care, palliative care. The point, the purpose of a critical care unit is to tune somebody up quickly and get them out. So this is a really hard sell. But I'm on board because it's what she wants. And it's not the most unreasonable because it works for her. And so then my job becomes chief diplomat. Right? The question, who does she need me to be? She needs me to be the diplomat between her and the critical care team. She needs me to be the person that's like, actually, friends, she's entirely reasonable. Actually, she does know she's dying. Actually, like, she has very reasonable time-limited goals, and like, I'm on board. So I think we should do it. And so that is my job many days a week in this case. She doesn't need much from me personally, but what she does need to know, she needs me to be working with that primary team to be like, yep, this is still the right thing to do. Yep, she still feels good. Good job, thank you. And so that's the role I need to play, and that's the role I play many hours a week for her in that case. And does that answer your question?
Almost, but not quite.
Okay, give me more. I was raised by Italians, so I talk too much and I use my hands. But
All right. What? The patient has all this information. The family has all this information. How does the patient help the family reach a stage of acceptance in the whole of their own demise?
yeah.
It's kind of like, don't bother me, I'm dying, I don't want a lot of extraneous, goodbyes and all of that kind of stuff, or that's what I kind of worry about.
Is it a
that
question?
they get too much, they get overwhelmed with help
Yeah.
in their transitioning, as opposed to what role does the patient play in the psychological sense, not the medical sense?
For their own selves or for their family or both?
For both.
For both. What role, like, Is it like, what is the role of the patient in their own dying process?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's go. Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't going to talk about dying because I was going to talk about more palliative care up to dying, but I love to talk about dying too, so we can do that. I wonder if one of the questions is like, what are some of the things that patients can do or often do to be at peace with their own dying? Is that one of the questions?
That's part of the question, to the extent that the family doesn't have to over-worry or interfere or...
And then in that process, how does the person maybe coach or care for their family?
Yeah,
And in saying, like, this is what I need from y'all and what I don't need from y'all?
yeah, that's part of it.
Am I getting there? Am I getting closer? I sort of...
It's kind of like the patient saying, "You're worrying me to death."
Literally.
Smother me,
Everybody...
just let me...
Yes. And it gets to, there's a assumption sort of underlying when we talk about these things of like, what is a good death? And I think for everybody that's different. And it makes me wonder, like for you, can I put you on the spot? Well, when you ask, if you were to imagine for yourself, and you could say, no, I don't want to talk about it. If you were to imagine for yourself what a good death might look like, have you ever had any thoughts of what that might look like?
No.
Okay, great. Yeah. So it's different for different people. And I can say that, the world's been around for a long time. People have been around for a long time. So this question of like, what is a good death? Lots of people have actually thought about before. And some people have written about it. And for some people, a good death is utterly peaceful. And they'll say, when it's time for me to die, I want to be in a quiet space with people I love, and I just want to drift off. Some people will say, I want to go down in some kind of blaze of glory, right? Like, I want to die a martyr for a cause. I want to jump out of an airplane. I want to be in an ICU with them doing everything, every tube and every theatrical thing that's ever been done, and I die regardless. So people have lots of different ideas in their head of what they want it to look like. And so the job of the patient and our job is to often think about what that is and be thoughtful about what that is. Some people will actually say it doesn't matter what a good death is, because only God knows the day and time. All that matters is that I do everything to stay alive. It doesn't matter how I die. And so that's another kind of approach to the question. Clinically, just thinking about the way that are taking our sort of cultural and behavioral differences out of it a little bit, and just thinking about dying bodies and how do bodies like to die, if bodies could have a preference apart from the culture in which they live, which they can't, so this is a thought experiment. But the way that bodies die is that often, if a body is dying more slowly from a terminal condition, bodies tend to become very hypersensitive in the last hours to days. Skin becomes hypersensitive. It becomes hard for the body to control temperature, so clothes can be very overwhelming. Bodies themselves really like to be left alone when they're dying. If bodies could express a preference through those things, they would say. So when people lose their consciousness, often they become maybe a little agitated. They're often kind of pulling clothes off, and they're kind of doing a lot of get away kind of gestures. And this can be very distressing for families who often want to glom. So I think that's another variable to keep in mind too. If self-compassion toward the body is a value that's important to you. So I think the job of the patient is actually to think about that question that I asked. And I want people to think about this at every stage of life. I want people to think about this when they're 20 years old. Of like, if your time comes, and you were to die, like where would you want it to be? Who would you want it to be with? What would you want it to look like? What would you want to be surrounded by? And I wish that we could all talk about that all the time and be fine with it. Because one of the hardest parts of our job is that people don't have those conversations and they can't answer those questions. And so then we get into the months, hopefully years, but maybe months, maybe weeks, maybe days, maybe hours before your death, and we don't know. We don't know what it is that you might want in that moment. And so then we just have to guess. And if you want us to guess, great, we'll do that. But if you want to have a say in it, it's good to start talking about it. A woman that I worked with early in my career was getting ready to retire. And she had a big, big family outside of Chicago. And she got all of her adult children together for Christmas. And she said, this year, everybody's coming to my house. Oh, it was Thanksgiving. That's what it was. She's like, this year, everybody's coming to my house for Thanksgiving. So she brings all the kids, all the grandkids, gets them all around the dinner table. And she passes around folders for everyone. And she says, okay, open your folders. And in it are her advance directives in great detail. And she says, this is my gift to you. When I die, there will be no questions about what I want. All you have to do is hand this folder to the doctors. And it did. It said, like, what kinds of, in what situation she might want what kinds of interventions, what values were important to her, what she wanted her end of life to look like, how she wanted to feel, what kind of symptom burden she was willing to tolerate and not. All of these things were in there. It sounds kind of bleak, and it's really a little heavy-handed, as it were, but in a way, it's a wonderful gift. And I think the role modeling of it is the part I appreciate too. Because if the older adults in our families can say, this is okay to talk about, they can also invite us to talk about it. They can also help normalize that, like, you know, what if you or your spouse gets that esophageal cancer when you're 39 years old? That's uniformly terminal. Will you be able to have these conversations as a family? Will you be able to have these conversations with your children? Because it might happen. And those are the patients I take care of the most. The majority of my patients in the hospital are an average age of 40. That's who I take care of in the hospital. Because those are the people who get blindsided by a terminal illness because they're not ready for it. They haven't been thinking about it. I don't know if I answered your question again, but I think I got closer.
Are you taking questions?
Of course, I'm always taking questions.
Okay.
This is more fun than PowerPoints.
Okay.
I mean, fun in a very sad way. Meaningful. It's meaningful. I shouldn't use the word fun.
I think fun's okay. So I have a deep desire to have this conversation go on for another 6 or 7 hours. But that said, we will all have to eat lunch. But I was wondering if you have a short list of 3 or 4 books that you recommend to people. And I was also wanting to say, just that, like, I have an adult daughter. She's 36. She and I can talk about end-of-life stuff really, really well. My mom died last summer at age 85. Would not have a conversation with anyone about it. And when somebody goes down miserably, I mean, the people in this room probably aren't the ones that need to hear this, because if you were willing to walk in this door, you're willing to think and talk about the fact that you're not going to live forever. But what do you recommend for how to maybe convince people that it's necessary? I was a deacon when I was 21 years old. It meant I visited people in the hospital every Sunday after church for 3 years. I started caring then about how I was going to die. How do we help people understand that, you know, that daughter from California who comes in and insists do everything over the parents' wishes? How do we not become that family?
Yeah. So many good questions in there. I'm going to say that one of the really important foundational beliefs that helps us do our job well is knowing and recognizing that we are not going to change people. We're not going to change what people want, what people don't want, what people are willing to talk about, what they're not willing to talk about. We're not going to change family dynamics. We're not going to change the, you know, person from out of state that wants to fly in and be the savior. But we can work with it. So that's one part of that, is that whatever the shenanigans are that people and families do, we're game for, and we will find a way to do what is most best for the patient in that context. I think that I don't want people to be miserable. I do want us to avoid that if we can, unless they find that meaningful. You know, I've had some of our neighbors from the Anthroposophic Society be very okay with what I would consider a fair amount of physical suffering, but they can find a way to find it meaningful, and so I'm here for that. But I typically don't want people to be miserable against their wishes or against their will, and I want us to, if loved ones with the best of intentions are maybe interfering with our ability to do that, we're going to have a conversation. I just did that yesterday. Wait, what's today? Sunday? Day before yesterday, on Friday. But we can't make people talk about things they don't want to talk about. But we can be good mentors. And I think that, seeing how late it is, and maybe a sort of final word of sorts, is that I realize that this is a little like preaching choir kind of thing. You know, you're here because you're okay with this topic. What that also means is that you could be champions. Our communities depend on our elders. And you are all a young and vibrant audience. This is not a statement on age. But elders are people with wisdom and experience and knowledge, and people who can hold the younger generations gently while giving them that wisdom. And so I think this is a gift that you can give this whole congregation, including to the people in my age demographic, is to say, let's hold spaces to talk about these things. It's okay. We can do it. There's a model out there for books, if you want. There's a model out there called Death Over Dinner. And it's an idea that you get a small group of people, different kinds of people around the table, and over a nice dinner, over a comfortable dinner, and you talk about death. You talk about experiences with death that you've had, how you think about death, fears, hopes, worries, and you talk about it together. So that's a great book. And then the other one I'm going to recommend, I'm going to apologize for the title of this. It's a book called Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? It's not...
That is a real question for a lot of my friends who are looking at it.
It's not as ridiculous of a book as it sounds. It's written by a woman called Caitlin Doughty, and she actually writes a series of books. She is a clinical anatomical pathologist. So she's someone who does autopsies, basically. And she writes a series of books about death and dying to normalize it and to sort of say, this happens to all of us. It is going to happen. It happens to a variety of people for a variety of reasons. Let's find ways to talk about it. So for books. Those are the two I would recommend. So we have another
You
6
have-
hours.
What?
Can we have another 6 hours and lunch?
Well, I mean, there's a lot. I think each of us have in our minds all kinds of things that we would like to continue the conversation about. You have been a gift to us today. Thank you so much. And thanks for modeling a kind of deeply spiritual, intellectual, calm, thoughtful, wise way of talking with people about dying, so that we can use you as a mentor to talk with ourselves about dying, and maybe to talk with friends and family members about it. We have a little gift for you as a reminder of life. Life after death. Or I don't want to get into that.
An entire plant room in my house.
Oh, I hope that there'll be a place for that. Good, good. So thank you. Thanks to everybody who was online. Thanks to all of you that have come, and many of you have come for all three. Thank you for the professionals that do this work, palliative care work. It's a kind of opportunity to find hope in how it is that we will end our lives, or confront people who die in an untimely way, in a timely way, in a difficult way, in a quiet way. So just thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dixon. Thank you.